Five Nights at Freddy's is a series of 16 games and 28 books. There is lots of content and story across this franchise, but today, I want to look at the main theme of the franchise. What is the core lesson we can get from the series? Because I believe there is one. I believe the theme is all about the past. In this video, I will be looking at 5 different corners of the franchise. The original FNAF games, those being 1 through 6, the FNAF novel trilogy, the Fazbear Fright series, the FNAF movie, and the Steel Wolf FNAF games. I want to explain how each of these share a very similar theme to each other and what the lesson all of us can learn from this franchise really is. For the original FNAF games, novel trilogy, and movie, I'm going to be combining a lot of stuff I talk about from those because I view those 3 timelines as just the same general story. Let's start off with the main character of the novel trilogy, Charlie. Charlie is the living result of Henry being unable to overcome the past. Henry being unable to overcome what he lost. On Halloween of 1982, Charlie and her twin brother Sammy were playing in the closet at Fredbear's family diner. During their playtime, William in his spring Bonnie suit kidnapped Charlie while no one was looking and had killed her. Henry loved Charlie, and he couldn't handle that she had lost her life at a young age. Henry was in grief and he was in denial. He started off by playing with Charlie's Ella doll. He cried over that cheap store-bought rag doll for 2 months. He cried into it, bled into it, he poured his grief all over it. Very unhealthy, he began to treat it as though he still had a daughter. Henry's solution to the situation was the craziest thing a father could think of. Henry was not satisfied with just pretending Ella was his daughter. Of course, he wasn't content with that. You had to grow up. So he made more. Jen, I swear she is more than another animatronic. You should see, she walks, she talks. Of course she walks and talks, Henry. She walks because everything you build can walk. She talks because everything you build can talk. But the reason why this one seems so real is because you're destroying your mind with these frequencies and codes. She remembers Jen, she remembers me, she remembers our family. No, Henry, you remember. Zap your head with enough of these rays, and I bet you can get your tea kettle to tell you about your lost family. My lost family. It doesn't have to be that way, but you need to let go of this. Your wife, your son, they can still be a part of your life, but you have to let go of this. She is in this doll. He gestured towards Ella, who was standing upright with her teacup perched on the tray. Henry had put the Ella doll inside of whatever Charlie he had made. He needed Charlie to grow up, so he made 4 stages of robots. Charlie would be a baby, then a little girl, and then a sulky teenager. Then at last, she would be a woman. The littlest Charlotte was made with a broken heart. She cried all the time, day and night. The second Charlotte he made when he was at the depth of madness, almost believing the lies he told himself. She was as hopelessly desperate for her father's love as he was for hers. The third Charlotte he made when he began to realize he'd gone mad, when he questioned every thought he had and begged his sister Jen to remind him what was real. The third Charlotte was strange. When Henry began to make the 4th, his despair turned to rage. He seethed as he soldered her skeleton together, pouring his anger into the forge where he shaped her very bones. I was not Charlotte drenched in grief. I was made alive with Henry's fury. Throughout these novels, Charlie is the living result of Henry's grief. Henry got a piece of his grief into the Charlie bots. Charlie ended up coming to life, and all the experiences she had growing up allowed Charlie to develop her own soul. While yes, at first Charlie was only a robot, as she grew, she slowly became just as alive as any other human. Henry was unable to let go of what he lost. He even gave her skin and fake blood just to make it believable that Charlie was human. Charlie was capable of bleeding, eating, drinking, crying, feeling hot or cold. Anything a human could do, thanks to Henry, Charlie could do that too. Charlie is grief and loss taking the form of a human girl, and Henry isn't the only one with a haunting past. Let's turn to the movie and look at the main character, Mike.
Garrett?
Garrett!
Mike lost his brother when he was 12. He was on a camping trip and his little brother Garrett was taken. Mike wants to find that killer. In the movie, Mike is constantly surrounding himself with things that remind him of Garrett before he goes to sleep. That way, he can dream the memory of Garrett being taken. Mike searches that memory for details he may have missed before, because he believes he saw the man who took his brother. When Mike works at Freddy's, he starts to feel even closer to his brother. The spirits of the kids, they know his brother. Mike thinks the kids are able to tell him who took Garrett, so he says he will give them anything they want.
Help me remember the man who took my brother.
If we show you, what will you give us?
Anything. I'll give you anything you want.
Cassidy calls Mike out on the truth. Mike doesn't just want to find the man who took his brother, he wants to go back and change what happened in the past.
Emergency landing.
Coming in.
Hey, buddy.
You'll just stand there again.
This isn't real.
But it could be. You want to save Garrett. That's why you're really here. To change what happened. To go back. You can have this dream every night. You can be together with him again. Like before.
Mike accepts the offer. He wants to have that dream every night, but at a price.
We want Abby.
Mike's desperation to fix the past just may cost him the life of his sister. Henry and Mike are two characters filled with guilt, but how could we apply their guilt in these two continuities to what we know about them in the games? With Mike, it's a lot easier to understand. While the movie mainly focused on adapting FNAF 1, another thing the movie adapted, or at least took a lot of elements from, is FNAF 4. Just like in the movie, Michael in the games also lost his brother when they were both kids, except the difference is, while in the movie Mike had no control with the situation, in the games it was completely Michael's fault. In the survival logbook, we learn Michael is the FNAF 4 player. One page has a prompt encouraging the user to draw their recent dreams. Michael draws Nightmare Fredbear. 3 Easter eggs in the FNAF 4 dreams are flowers, an IV, and pill bottles all randomly appear next to your bed sometimes. The IV and flowers allude to what happened to Michael's brother after the bite. He was rushed to the hospital, but the pills... In the movie, Mike constantly takes sleeping pills to have the dreams every night. It seems in FNAF 4, Michael is doing the exact same thing. We also know, just like in the movie, Michael in the games is also surrounding himself with stuff that would remind him of Garrett. We hear the FNAF 1 Night 1 call in reverse during each night. Why would that call remind Michael of Garrett? In the movie, Mike feels close to Garrett when he works at Freddy's, and that's his motivation for coming back every single night.
Alright, look. I think that they know who took my little brother. I can't explain it, but when I'm here, I feel closer to Garrett. My dreams are more vivid, and it's like I can almost...
Change what happened?
If we apply that to the games, then Michael now has a reason to want to come back for every single night in FNAF 1. That would be why Michael has the FNAF 1 tapes. That location reminds him of Garrett, just like the movie. When Michael surrounds himself with Garrett-related objects, he falls asleep and dreams about Garrett's memories. In the movie, Mike wants to find out who the man who kidnapped Garrett is, while in the games, it appears Michael is dreaming about the experiment rooms from Dittophobia. If these dreams are supposed to relate to Garrett, that would imply Garrett was put into the gas experiment rooms and was forced to face off with the nightmare animatronics. Now Michael is being forced to do the same thing. That would also explain why Garrett is terrified of the animatronics in the FNAF 4 minigames. In the games, it appears Michael wants to know what Garrett was so afraid of back then, and he got his answer. In the movie, Mike got his answer too. The man who took Garrett was William Afton. In the games, what Garrett was afraid of was the experiments that his father, William Afton, forced him through. In both the games and movie, William Afton is the answer Michael was looking for. Michael regrets what he did to Garrett. His past haunts him throughout all the games he was in, and he is desperately trying to fix his mistakes. So that's how Mike in the movie translates to Michael in the games, but what about Henry? How does Henry in the novels translate to Henry in the games? Well, a huge difference between the aftermath of Charlie's death in these two continuities is while in the novels Charlie was brought back by Henry's robots, the games take a different approach. In the games, Charlie's soul does not move on after she's murdered. Instead, Charlie's soul possesses the puppet. While I don't think Henry is aware of this for quite a while after this occurs, we also know Henry didn't grieve the same way he did in the novels. Yes, Henry was still heartbroken, he was still in so much pain when he found out about his daughter's death. He didn't create any human robots this time around, however. Instead, he just tried to carry on with Freddy's. Henry did try some new things. In 1987, he opened the FNAF 2 pizzeria and built the toy animatronics. The toy animatronics were built with very advanced technology. Henry programmed the toys to have facial recognition that go into criminal databases.
They've spent a small fortune on these new animatronics. Facial recognition, advanced mobility. They even let them walk around during the day. Isn't that neat? But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away. Heck, we should be paying them to guard you.
This was done so that if anyone who probably should not be allowed in the pizzeria due to criminal history, rather they are a predator, a kidnapper, or anyone that may potentially want to harm a child, the toy animatronics would alert authorities and get the person kicked out of the pizzeria. Henry does this because at the previous Freddy's there was an incident where 5 kids went missing and they were all last seen with a man dressed up as Spring Bonnie. Meanwhile, before that, Henry's own daughter was found dead in the back alley of Fredbear's Family Diner. These precautions were needed. Henry originally started Freddy's out of love. He wanted to make children happy. However, that was ripped away from him when his business partner killed those kids. Perhaps in FNAF 2, Henry is trying to convince himself that this is another shot at Freddy's. That with this new technology, nothing bad will happen at Freddy's again. That this restaurant will live on.
Hello? What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Henry was wrong. William strikes again. He kills 5 more children at this Freddy's restaurant too. A little over a week later, one of the animatronics bit off the frontal lobe of an employee, Jeremy Fitzgerald. This restaurant closes too, but Henry cannot let Freddy's go. He is still clinging on to it, and in response, he tries one more time by reopening the original Freddy's restaurant. It doesn't stay open for very long, and the building becomes abandoned. Henry, Emily, and Michael Afton both have a past they are unable to let go of. But not just them, William Afton does too. William's story starts off very simple. He does all the business-related stuff for Fazbear Entertainment. Over time, he becomes more and more jealous of Henry, the animatronics Henry can build, and the family Henry has. William wants a family so he can love like Henry. But William is also not capable of feeling love. As time goes on, William slowly starts to play with supernatural forces. It started when he saw Charlie's soul enter the puppet after he had killed her. William killed 5 more kids and stuffed their bodies in the animatronics. The kids possessed the animatronics, and William used his Spring Bonnie suit to influence the kids into doing what he wants them to do: kill people. William has made himself more powerful than Henry. He has outdone Henry. He wants to be feared. He views the kids' souls as his family. William is trying to leave his mark on the world. However, things change quickly. At the end of the Silver Eyes, William gets spring-locked and dies inside the suit before coming back to life and becoming Springtrap. The spring lock incident causes the kids' spirits to see who Afton really is, which results in William losing that influence. He is not able to control what the kids do anymore. They no longer listen to him. In the fourth closet, William desperately tries to get the influence back. He gets Elizabeth to find the endos of the Freddy's animatronics, and then he melts them down and tries to force their souls into the Funtime animatronics so they can be back in their happiest day at Freddy's, and once again believe William is their friend. I think it's... what? Moving. Of course it is. Of course they are. It looks like it's in pain? Yes. The table's surface was glowing orange and the hot metal hissed. He took a syringe from the woman's hand and thrust it into the squirming thing forcefully. He drew the plunger up, holding the needle steady as the syringe filled with molten substance, then finally pulled away with a jolt. He staggered toward the bear. Now let us put you to greater purpose, he said to the glowing syringe. The man pried open the heavy chest plate of the standing, broken bear, then carefully inserted the syringe he held directly into the chest cavity and began to press the plunger down. It needs to be heated more. You'll destroy them. Their lives will now have a greater purpose. Melting the endos together caused the souls to easily be able to split up across every single Funtime animatronic. Just like before, the kids were back in a happiest day-like state, where they believed they were at Freddy's and they trusted and listened to William once again. William refuses to lose the control he has over the animatronics, so that is why he forces the souls to split up throughout the Funtimes. When it comes to how Afton impacts the story, we see throughout the series there's the stuff he physically does, and there's the legacy that he leaves behind. Which is why I want to bring up Eleanor, the legacy of William Afton. Afton is very much present throughout the Fazbear Fright series. His legacy remains. Eleanor is a supernatural entity who hurts a variety of people, often feeding into their pain before she kills them. In the Fazbear Fright series, we see Eleanor take on the form of Spring Bonnie, Funtime Freddy, Fetch, Plushtrap, Ella, Foxy, Ballora, Ralpho, Blackbird, Shadow Bonnie, and Lucky Boy. Her main form, however, is a doll that looks similar to Circus Baby. Eleanor traps all of her victims' souls inside of a ball pit where they are forced to relive the memory of their death over and over and over again. Into the Pit shows Eleanor force a kid named Oswald to live in the memory of the missing children's incident from 1985, while Eleanor takes on the form of Spring Bonnie, the Yellow Rabbit. But in the way Afton was remembered, instead of seeing the Spring Bonnie costume, Spring Bonnie is presented as a literal demon with sharp teeth and blood. Eleanor looks like the monster that Afton was remembered as, due to the mark Afton left in Hurricane. Eleanor is able to hurt many people. As long as there are those who remember the atrocities committed at Freddy's, Eleanor is able to live on. She is the past in its own supernatural form, but Eleanor is not the only version of Afton returning. Fazbear Entertainment, in their rush to rebrand the company and give themselves a better look, make a game where they recreate all personalities from the past. However, this is a decision that will soon be regretted. Glitchtrap is the past coming back. Fazbear Entertainment used a program called Mimic 1 to create their game. That's how all the animatronics AI were coded. However, something they scanned into the game that runs on Mimic 1 had seen Afton's crimes, and now it wants to replicate everything he did. William Afton is a curse to the Fazbear name. No matter what the company does, their past and their future will forever be haunted by everything Afton has ever done. William was spring-locked.
I always come back.
But he came back.
I always come back.
Henry burned him, but the legacy of Afton lives on in the form of Eleanor and in the form of Glitchtrap. past seems to never truly die in this series. William Afton seems to come back in some sort of new form every time the previous form is killed. However, the past isn't entirely unkillable. In the movie, Mike does get over his past with Garrett. The kids try to take Abby from him, and Mike rushes to the pizzeria to save her. Once he does, he lets Abby know how much he loves her.
I've been an idiot about so many things. I've been stuck trying to fix the past, but you are the most important thing in the world to me, and I promise you I'm gonna do better.
They face a few more obstacles, but when Mike and Abby escape the pizzeria, they live a much better life. Mike is no longer focused on trying to save Garrett like he was before. He is able to let that go and now focus on what's really important, his sister Abby. In the games, after FNAF 4, Michael learns he needs to move on from Garrett too. While his brother's death was his fault, Michael decides to let go of his past too. He knows he can't let it haunt him forever. Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. In the novel trilogy, Henry is also able to let his past go. However, it's not a happy ending for him like it is for Michael. Here's Henry's final note to his sister before his death. "My dearest Jenny, I had an entire list of instructions written out for you. Schedules and timetables, keys and procedures. You have indulged me so much, and it's only now, at the end, that I see how it has helped me get through these dark times, but also how ultimately empty it has been. I had everything so carefully planned. I've worked so tirelessly. I've warped and twisted my surroundings to the point where I can never be sure if I've completely settled back into reality. And even if I did manage to turn off everything planted in the walls to deceive myself, I think my mind would deceive me still. I don't need clinical testing of the long-term effects of these devices to know that I've undoubtedly done permanent damage to myself. I will always see what I see, but worse than that, there is the splinter, more like the stake, always deep into my heart, reminding me more and more every day that what I see is a lie. Through your patience and your indulgence of me, you've tried to keep me happy, but it's also somehow brought me back from this world I've made for myself. I think maybe it would have been better for you to have not indulged me. Then I could have excluded you from my bubble, convinced myself that you were crazy like everyone else, but instead, your unceasing love caused me to listen to you, to let you in, and the consequences of that was seeing the truth in your eyes and letting that in as well. I have my Charlie here with me. You will never have to indulge me in her again. Rather than taking joy in her, I have cried over her, so many countless tears. I have poured agony into her until she serves as another reminder, not of what I once had, but of the unbearable pain of what was taken from me. She has come to reflect my pain back to me, whereas I, for a time, took great comfort in her eyes. I now only see loss, endless, deliberating loss. Her eyes will never fill me again. In fact, they have emptied me. Keep all the closets shut. Let them be tombs for my denial and my grievance. My only lasting instruction for you concerns the fourth closet. It is not enough to keep it shut. You must keep that one sealed and buried. My grief was already beginning to awaken to reality when I began what was to be her final stage. When I rose slightly from the depth of my despair, I saw that I had no choice but to seize my work, for I was only feeding my own delusion. My old faithful partner, who I can only hope now is in a grave of his own, took what I had begun and made something dreadful. He crafted my beloved work into something of his own and endowed it with who knows what kinds of evil. I was able to stop him and seal away what he made, and you, Jenny, must ensure that the seal remains. I would instruct you to demolish the house if I could trust that it could be done effectively. Keep it and make sure the world forgets it. Then someday, after many decades have passed and no one remembers, fill it with every kind of flammable thing and burn it to the ground, standing close guard to put a bullet into anything that emerges from the rubble, no matter what or who it looks like. I'm going to be with my daughter. Love always and to the end, Henry. This was Henry's suicide note. Henry built a robot with a knife and the robot stabbed him to death. And that was the end of Henry's story. Henry knew he had created a life for himself when he built the Charlie bots. And now he wants nothing to do with them. He takes his life, so instead of being on Earth, he can be in heaven with his real daughter. In the games, Henry's death is less tragic, instead it's more heroic. Since in the games, Henry never builds the Charlie bots, he never takes his life in the mid-80s. Instead, he is still alive for decades. However, Henry is still haunted by the tragedies of Freddy's and what happened to Afton's victims afterwards. Henry knows he has to call all possessed animatronics back to one location in order to free their souls.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of this creature, this monster that I unwillingly helped to create, as if what he had already done wasn't enough. He found a new way to desecrate, to humiliate, to destroy. As if the suffering wasn't enough, the loss of innocence, the loss of everything to so many people. Small souls trapped in prisons of my making, now set to new purpose, and used in ways I never thought imaginable. Are they still aware? I hope not. It keeps me awake at night. I could make myself sleep, but not yet. Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this. I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now, not like this. I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
He traps Afton in there as well.
You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
Michael helps Henry with this plan. However, while an escape route was originally planned for Michael, he does not want that. Michael is where he wants to be.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be.
Michael has already forgiven himself for his past mistakes, and now all he wants to do is burn so he can rest with the other spirits, so he can be with both his brother and his sister again, as they all ascend into heaven. Henry has one final message for his daughter until they enter the afterlife together too.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
Henry, Emily, and Michael Afton, two characters with pasts that haunt them for the rest of their lives. However, they find a way to overcome their past, let go of the tragedies, and move on. It was not easy, but they did it. Not only did these two save themselves, but they managed to save the soul of every kid William had killed too. William, however, is still desperate to cling on to reality. He tries splitting his soul throughout many objects related to Fazbear Entertainment, and William turns into a giant trash monster. With each additional piece clamping into place, the miscreation stood taller and taller, until it was nearly 15 feet tall. The moment the rabbit-shaped fusion of trash met Larson's gaze, Larson was able to accept what he'd known when he'd first watched the monster put itself together. The thing was Afton. But now he could see that every animatronic part crammed into Afton's warped configuration was doing its best to sing and dance all over Afton. Animatronic arms and legs, hands and feet, and fingers and toes were swaying and bopping to the music the mouths were attempting to perform. Afton is just a monster destroying everything in his path. He even has created a new name for himself, repositioning his pieces so he stood taller and broader on the end of the dock. The loathsome atrocity that was William Afton announced in such sonorous tones that the dock juddered. I am agony. However, William is weak. He was clinging on to the last bit of reality his soul had. Eleanor was the only reason William's soul was still around. Detective Larson used the puppet's mask, which still had Charlie's spirit inside of it, to defeat the Afton amalgamation. Eleanor abandoned Afton as the amalgamation came apart. The Awful Man's spirit wasn't as powerful as it had pretended to be. Jake had felt that Afton's spirit was barely hanging on to this reality. So how would Afton have been able to battle the detective the way he did? Something besides Afton had been controlling the trash rabbit, and whatever it was worse. Before Afton had been killed, during the fight, a detective named Larson had been stabbed by Afton. Jake, also known as the Stitch Rave, was able to cauterize Larson's wound. That way, Afton's evil was not able to control Larson. However, due to the stabbing, Larson started to see what exactly was keeping Afton alive: the past. Larson was seeing things he shouldn't have been able to see. He was getting glimpses into the past. These glimpses were real, or at least they seemed real. They were memories, but not his own. These images belonged to others, from different places and different times. Larson was watching Freddy Fazbear and the other animatronics that had been all the rage when Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was in its heyday, as they performed a rousing rendition of an 80s rock song Larson hadn't heard in years. The music was so loud and its bass so intense that Larson could feel the beat vibrating his mattress. He wasn't just seeing things from the past, he was experiencing them. In addition to the vibrations that fluttered through his body, Larson could smell pizza. One minute he was in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the next he was hanging out with his friends, or at least someone else's friends. But always, no matter how many times he jumped from one scene to the next, the filler, that's how he'd come to think of it between the scenes, was always the same. As his mind swept him from one visit to the past to another, he always saw the same thing in between. He saw a ball pit. When the ball pit appeared to him, he could feel the grubby plastic around him, like he was swimming through beads of spear-shaped water. So Larson is getting glimpses of the one thing that was keeping Afton and Eleanor both alive: the past. Larson ends up having a battle with Eleanor, where she forces him through many bad memories contained in the ball pit. Larson ends up in a loop, going through bad memory to bad memory until Jake stops Eleanor. How does he do that? Holding Eleanor's wrists. Jake loomed over her, his eyes burning with fury. He leaned over her until her face and torso were covered by his cloak. She twisted and kicked, but he just pressed closer, eyes blazing with fury, burning into Eleanor until she was still. Jake concentrated until he was able to access Eleanor's memories, if they could be called memories. Jake reached into those years and found a moment of seething anger and anguish. He figured if he could stuff Eleanor into a bubble of that moment, he could subdue her. He was right. With that one intention, Eleanor was defeated, contained, her foul spirit folded in on itself and was silenced. When Jake saw her lying on the table, she had the dry, withered appearance of an ancient mummy. She was more than dead. She was empty. a husk. All it took was Jake trapping Eleanor into her own bad memory. Once Eleanor is defeated, Jake goes to the ball pit. Jake finds every single soul of everyone Eleanor had killed who are trapped in the ball pit. Then Jake changes the soul's memory. These souls are trapped in their own bad memory of their death. They are forced to live through it over and over again. Jake, however, makes it a mission to save every single soul, so he turns their bad memories into happy ones instead. Eleanor thought as long as she used Freddy's past to keep herself alive, she'd be invincible. She was wrong. Glitchtrap also relied on Afton's past to stay alive. In Help Wanted 2, we have to collect 6 plushies representing the memory of William Afton's victims: Charlie, Susie, Fritz, Gabriel, Jeremy, and Cassidy. Glitchtrap is still clinging on to the memory of the past. When you collect all the memory plushies, you get access to Princess Quest 4, where you then work your way through Glitchtrap's lair and light each kid's grave to show that this is long in the past now, that the children have now rested their souls. Glitchtrap becomes weak and is defeated. That's the lesson we can learn from FNAF, that everyone is able to overcome their past, no matter how traumatic or tragic it may have been. Characters like Henry and Michael were in some of the worst situations. William caused pain to so many people that it allowed other entities to feed onto that pain, such as Eleanor and Glitchtrap, so they could grow to become more powerful. However, Henry was able to forgive himself for what happened to Charlie. Michael was able to forgive himself for what happened to Garrett. They worked hard to free every single soul that William took the lives of. Once they did that, William became weaker and weaker until his soul was forced out of this reality and entered a new one. The gates of hell have finally opened up for William Afton. With William gone, it was only a matter of time before Eleanor and Glitchtrap were going to die too. It didn't take much effort either. They just had to see that the past was slowly starting to fade away, and because of that, they were no longer able to feed off that pain. This is what Five Nights at Freddy's is about, overcoming the past. You can't change what happened in your past, but you are able to grow, find a way to move on. That is the theme of Five Nights at Freddy's.